validating new business cases can be extremely expensive. Doesn't matter if you're an enterprise, if you're a startup or a first-time founder or whatever. In the end, you have a choice to make, right? You have an idea, something that you think the market wants, or maybe some part of the market already told you, hey, I want this, or this is awesome, right? But usually until you get the first revenue or first profit from that idea, you don't truly know, right? You can just crawl your way forward and reduce the risk. And last time we spoke about the service-based approach, right? You can check the video if you go back the timeline a little bit. But today, let's quickly talk about the waitlist approach, right? It's a little bit more known and less intuitive, right? It's a little bit more capital intensive, right? Because what you need to do is, let's say you have an idea. The first thing I usually urge people or founders to do is get an idea of what single pain point you want to solve, right? And that single pain point will usually just appeal to a certain customer segment, right? If it seemingly appears to everyone, right, it's usually most likely not a strong enough of a pain point, right? Because the more specific you are, the stronger the pain point usually becomes. Because otherwise, there would be super strong competitors already, right? And the market highly likely is super saturated for many, many, many years, and it would be much more difficult, right? Not saying that it's not possible, right? But usually, the more narrow you start with a super strong pain point, targeting a more narrow ICP, like ideal customer profile, like someone you want to sell to, the better, right? And since you don't know yet, right, what people actually want to pay for, you usually have to come up with several pain points that appeal to different ICPs, to different target groups, right? And this then, of course, needs to be evaluated, tested, like which communication angle actually from that perspective and which pain point should you focus on to get started, right? Of course, there are a lot of things to consider here, like how easy is it to reach those people, right? It's definitely easier to reach a young professional versus a VC or someone who is demanded by a lot of people, right? So these kind of things, of course, also play into that when choosing a target group as someone you want to sell to. And the thing here is, by following the waitlist approach, you already get to, like, you get an impression of how difficult it is to reach those people, how expensive it might be, right? And what they most likely react to, like, what do they truly care about? Like, is your assumption of that pain point you want to solve actually correct, right? So if you do have a little bit more capital, more resources, right? Validating through waitlists, for example, can be a really interesting approach, right? Otherwise, I usually recommend the service-based approach. So for the waitlist approach, what you can come up with is you have these ICPs, those customer groups that you want to sell to. You have that pain point that you think they're gonna react to. What you now can do is, and I recommend doing this either through an agency or a freelancer specialized in marketing, or sorry, or if you have a better organic reach, you can test it yourself on social media, right? LinkedIn, Instagram, or wherever your target group is. So you have these communication angles, and then vibe code, right? A simple waitlist or something like that, or get a waitlist done by these highly converting page builders out there, right? Instapage is one of them. There are tons of them out there. A lot of them don't cost any money, right? That's why I'm saying, hey, maybe just vibe code something, because you really just want to test, right? Of course, collecting email addresses and so on is great, but in the end, you really just want to know, hey, do people like the idea and are triggered enough to put the email address down, right? So it's the first indication of some interest, and then you can narrow it down further and further, right? So this allows you to cheaply test, either through paid advertising. As mentioned, I recommend an agency here or freelancer that knows what they're doing, so that you don't waste a lot of money through missing skills, right? But instead, it's actually the value proposition that you're selling that is not strong enough. And this way, I think you get the idea, you get a strong sense of what people care about. So this allows you to then strike away some ICPs for now, because maybe they're super expensive to reach, right? And to get someone convert, or they really just don't care about your assumptions, right? Of course, you can also just test more communication angles, which also is a great thing to do. But usually very quickly you get into a direction where you see, okay, this customer group is easier to reach. this customer reacts to that pain point, and I think I can solve that pain point in a reasonable MVP quite quickly and cost effective, right? So that's usually how this goes. And yeah, as mentioned, I usually recommend the service-based approach, but this is also